I was telling him that my son was really difficult and had a hard time. And he stopped me and he said, he's not difficult, he's in pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's so right on. I have this lens and I'm not looking at the deeper thing that is happening here. And so I had been seeing his actions. I wasn't really seeing him. It was such a wake up moment for me. Welcome to The Way of the Muse, a podcast for women who want to create richness in every area of their lives, from business and career to lifestyle, relationships, family, purpose, and fulfillment. I'm Gigi Sage.
And I'm McKenna Sage. We're a mother-daughter coaching team, and combined, we've spent over 4 decades helping people create their best and most fully expressed lives. If you're ready to step into your bigger dreams with ease, fun, and flow, you're in the right place. Let's get into the episode.
So hello, beautiful listener. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're new to the show, I want to welcome you. This is Way of the Muse. My name is Gigi Sage, and I do this podcast with my daughter, McKenna Sage. And I'm so excited to have you here because this topic today is very dear to my heart. It's something that I observe through working with people over 30 years. And it's something that is so subtle that most people don't even realize that they're doing it. So have you ever been so sure about who someone is that you don't even realize you're seeing them through this kind of fixed lens? Maybe you thought, my partner's really critical or my child is so difficult. But, what if that's not the full truth? What if the way we see people actually shapes the way they show up in our lives? Really think about that. So today I want to talk to you about the power of what I call of holding a view and how our perceptions can trap the people we love and how shifting our perspective can change our relationships. And I mean, completely change them. So why we hold views in the first place? Why do we do that? We don't hold the views on purpose. It's just how our minds work. Our brains love patterns. They love to look, loves to look for shortcuts and to understand the world. So if we have a difficult interaction with someone, our mind starts to actually categorize them. They're rude, they're selfish, they're unreliable. And then once we label them that way, guess what we do? We start to look for evidence to confirm it, right? We notice the times when they let us down, but we miss the times when they show up. Or we notice the times when maybe they're a little rude, but we miss the times when they're so there for us and present. And so we hear the criticism, but we miss the most moments of kindness. And it's not because we're bad people. It's because we get stuck in our stories that we tell ourselves. As I said, I started to notice this early on when I was teaching and leading workshops for about 20 years for women on how to communicate with men. And that was both personally and professionally. And I would see that when women had a fixed view about the man in their life, it was very difficult for them to step back and observe and look deeper into maybe what was going on with him or her and what was going on within themselves. So I started teaching a way that you could step back and you could notice your view, because when you start to see your view, sometimes it's really embarrassing because it's so unconscious. And so if you find yourself when you're listening to this and you go, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for years, don't be hard on yourself. Just go, what can I do to make a shift now? So I have a story about, I was really struggling with my son. And I had actually built this narrative that he was difficult. And I took that view into every interaction with him. I was so frustrated, right? So it shaped how I spoke to him, how I reacted, and even how I would anticipate our conversations anytime I would talk with him. And then I had this moment a couple of years ago, and let me tell you, it was a light bulb moment. And I really, really want to acknowledge my coach, Alok Aparati. No, I'm not pronouncing that correctly, because he in the moment, I was telling him that my son was really difficult and had a hard time. And he stopped me and he said, "He's not difficult, he's in pain." And I was like, oh my gosh, he's so right on. I have this lens and I'm not looking at the deeper thing that is happening here. And so I had been seeing his actions. I wasn't really seeing him. It was such a wake up moment for me. And I went to him and I apologized because I felt so embarrassed about it. And I completely shifted the way I saw him. And there was a huge ripple effect that I think happened, and a lot of changes that happened due to just that one thing, that one shift. And I also want to share, I watched a new movie that's out by the director, Sofia Coppola. And I love her directing. And she often has Bill Murray in her movies. And he's in this movie, and the movie is so enlightening about the way our views create our reality. It's one of the best movies I've seen in a long time because after it, it really makes you think. It really made me think. And again, a lot of it was on the topic I love, which is about men and women and relationship. And the name is On the Rocks. It's on Apple TV. So if you get a chance to see it, I would definitely see it because it's just such a beautiful way of seeing how we get caught on a view and how that creates our life and then also creates our relationships. So we do this in so many of our relationships. We see our spouse as distant instead of maybe overwhelmed. We see our friend as maybe selfish instead of they're struggling or they're having a hard time or they're really busy. And once we fix that view, we reinforce it. Like I said, we look for evidence. But what happens is when we shift our lens, and I see this happen in relationships all the time. Let's say if your partner forgets your birthday once and you start telling yourself, they don't really care about me. And from then on, everything they do gets filtered through this view. And so I really, today, as you're listening to this, I want you to think about where that's happening in your life. And here's the way that pans out. If your partner comes home tired or quiet, then you think, they don't care about me. But in reality, they might have had a really rough day. And so you think, see, here's the evidence. And then you distance from them and you don't really have a conversation and you go into, they don't care. But what if that story isn't true? What if they're overwhelmed or they're struggling in ways that you don't see because you're not in their life all day at work? And the lens we use changes the entire picture. So it changes how we feel. It changes how we see the partner. And then it so much changes how they show up. So I want you to think about a specific person in your life right now. Someone maybe that you've labeled in a way. Maybe it's your partner, it's a friend, it's your mother, it's a coworker, or even your own child, like I shared. And what's the story you've been telling yourself about them? If there's friction or if there's distance or there's conflict, then what are you telling yourself? Now, what happens if you loosen the grip on that story? If for a moment you put that story aside and you step back and you get curious and you go, what might you see that you hadn't noticed before? Like I said, maybe they came in and they've got a really tough thing happening at work, but you already had this view before that started happening. And so the evidence has built for months, and then you lose connection with your partner and you distance more and more. And let me tell you, in my years of what I've been doing in coaching and working with people and working with couples, this is a big one, and it happens all the time. And people don't realize it. And they just don't even have the tools or don't even have the knowledge to know that they're holding a view. So here's what I want you to do. Here's a simple practice. Anytime you find yourself saying, this person is always like this, notice the view you're holding. And instead of reinforcing it, get curious. Ask yourself, what else could be true here? What else could be going on? What might be going on underneath the surface? They might have so many things going on in their life or something bothering them you have no idea about. And maybe if it's a child, they feel like they can't tell you. And, there's not an opening for it, that you've already got this preconceived view. And even better, have a conversation if you can. And I teach a lot of skills about how to have those conversations, those deeper conversations where you keep the reaction out and you respond instead. And that's a much deeper and more advanced skill. This is the first piece, is just to start to notice how you see people. And then what I want you to do is to approach them with fresh eyes without the story. Put the story aside completely. Imagine it's not there. And you might be surprised at what you discover and said. And this is so fascinating. Start with one person and just try it. When they're coming in and maybe they're distant, maybe instead of immediately reacting and thinking they don't care about me, they're not interested in me, you get curious and you get interested in them. Hey, what's going on? Is something bothering you? Did you have a difficult time at work today? Or what was the best moment at your work today? And then sit back and listen, because often when you are in that receptive mode, people will start to open up to you. Now, here's the other thing. Everything's not going to fix overnight, right? Just start really, really, really small. Pay attention to your thoughts about people and challenge yourself to look for something new in them. And this spirals into a lot of different topics that I talk about, because when we have a view, often we look for agreements about our view. And that's another podcast I'll do, and how detrimental that is to you and to the people around you. And if you feel ready to have that conversation, but not from a place of proving them, that they're wrong, from a place of seeing them fully and see what changes. And as I said, if it doesn't change immediately, don't be hard on yourself. Don't then go, see, I told myself. Try it a few different times from a few different ways. Because once people get into a holding pattern where there's a view and the other person feels your view, and it's been like that for a long time, they're going to have their defenses up. And so you're really, really going to have to go into it with the view set aside. And sometimes that conversation is, like I did with my son, is apologizing. Listen, I've been really holding this view about you instead of really looking to see what's going on with you. I'd love to know, what's happening, because I feel distance and I don't know, is there something you're upset with me about, or what's going on? And sometimes the person will say, hey, listen, I just have been feeling so stressed at work, so uncomfortable, and I don't want to get it on you. And so that's why I'm being distant. It can be as simple as that. I have watched profound shifts, and I mean profound shifts, happen in relationships, all kinds of relationships, with these simple conversations like this. When somebody sets aside their story and their view, and they actually get curious, and they mend relationships that have had maybe conflict for many years. And so this simple little start of understanding. And the other thing is to begin to watch yourself daily, how you go into a view, and set that aside, because the view never serves anyone, I promise you. And there's a distinction here. There is something that somebody's doing, right? If somebody's doing something and it's consistent, then it's true they're doing that, and that's the truth. And then the view we hold about it, what we say it is where the view comes in, right? And so, to start to observe that and see, we don't just need each other, we need each other clearly. And that's what we let go of when we let go of the view, and we stop holding on so tightly to this. This should flow naturally. So this is again, one of those really subtle topics but very profound on how they show up in your relationship. So thank you for being here. If you like this episode, give us a star or definitely rate the show. We love it when you do that. And thank you for showing up. And please let us know what topics you're interested in. You can always share with us because we love sharing anything that is going to create value in your life, in your relationships, in your business. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
That's our episode for today, but let's not make it the end of our love story. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and think of some women in your life you'd love to share it with. And if you want to learn more about our events and programs, visit wayofthemuse.com. See you next time.